and welcome to another video. My name is Jazz, or V, whatever you like to call me. And today I have for you my January reading wrap up. Now, this video might be a little late because I don't know how well you can hear it, but I've been sick last week and it was really difficult to film. So first I was like sick. I couldn't even get out of bed basically. And then I just had like a cough and my voice was just not 100%, and I still don't feel 100% in my vocal cords region, especially like because of my nose. I don't know, it's all kind of clogged, but I feel good enough again, so I'm back on track. But just so you know, the video might be a little late because I couldn't film at any point last week. Anyhow, today we'll be talking about the 8 books I've read in January, and yeah, there's some exciting books there. I hope you will enjoy it. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell, and if you like the video, leave a like. That helps me. Let's get right into the video. As you may have heard when I talked about my 2026 reading plans, a video I uploaded in December, I will link it. I am reading the complete work of Octavia E. Butler. And so of course, to start off well, I started with an Octavia E. Butler book for my first book in January. Additionally to that, I was also craving like sci-fi, but we will get into that because I have quite some sci-fi reads for you. So the first book I read in January was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This is a book that is getting like more attention. I've seen a few videos on like my Instagram, for example, but also on YouTube of people reading and recommending the book. And I've had this book on my list ever since I've had Octavia on my radar. I thought it would be a good way to start 2026. I'm also someone who continuously has said that I think Parable of the Sower will become a huge book in all the bookshelves in 2026. So we'll see how this will go. That's my prediction. So yeah, this book is set in, or it begins in 2024 and it spans the time until like 2027. It follows a girl called Lauren. She lives in California and it's a dystopian novel. So it is our time written as a dystopia. I'm not gonna, I think we are already living a dystopia without having to write it down, you know what I mean? But anyways, it's a bit more grave in some ways than it is right now here. And Lauren lives in a gated community. Her father is a pastor. He's very religious, and in general, the entire community is very religious. And she herself is kind of preparing for the day where this all falls, because outside of the community, there is mayhem. Like, people are starving on the streets, people are looting, there are fire being set, there are new drugs emerging that are killing people en masse, there's death constantly surrounding them. And Lauren's kind of like, she even talks about it with her dad. She goes like, what will we do when like our community falls? Like, we need to prepare to what's to come afterwards. And the book is written as her diary entries. So all we get is her narration of what is happening. And there are sometimes like huge time gaps, especially in the beginning. I like it a lot. It's often compared to 1984, and I understand why, because from the writer's perspective, it's the same system. So George Orwell wrote 1984 in 1948, or he released it then, which means he like was looking into the future 35 years. Octavia did the same thing with Parable. She wrote Parable of the Sower in 1994, and it plays in 2024. So she was also looking into a dystopian future 30 years from her lived time. It's very interesting. For me, I rated the book 4 stars, so I liked it a lot. It wasn't a 5-star read because I think, for me personally, it is too close to current times. At the moment, I can't really analyze it on its like quality of predicting. I don't know how to explain, but what makes 1984 a 5-star read for me is that I can look back and see like, wow, okay, so these things are kind of similar and these are vastly different, and those are the lessons we take with us. Now, for Parable of the Sower, I don't feel I can take a lesson because it is at the moment very much, we're going into that direction. Like in 5 years from now, we could easily be where this book is, and that's kind of scary. And for me, I feel if I would read it in 10 or 20 years, would read it again, and I could look back and go like, wow, okay, so this is actually crazy, I'd definitely give it 5 stars. But at the moment, it's like too close to home for me to say that everyone should be reading that. I don't feel there's a lesson right now that I can take out of the book for my lived experience or the future right now, which is kind of crazy, which says a lot about the book. And it's a really good book. I do recommend it. There are some trigger warnings. You should definitely like look them up. It's quite a graphic book. And while I was reading already early on, I was wondering like, why was this book not turned into a movie? Because obviously it's a very cool concept. And as I was reading, I was like, actually, this book should not be a movie. It should be a game. It would be an insane video game. I like low-key hope that some gaming studio, some indie studio picks up that book, someone there, and is like, actually, this would be such an insane game. It's so, the way it's written, it just really feels almost like she's going on a mission, and it's like gamified in a way. Because she has to take like big decisions, which felt like if you're in a game, you have to take these decisions. I'm a gamer, by the way. That's why I'm thinking like that. If you have to take these big decisions, that's definitely something that would like change the complete story. And I really thought that was really cool. And overall, I'm a big fan of Octavia's prose. She has a way of writing that just catches you, that makes you want to continue reading. And compared to Kindred, I have to say I was a bit less devastated regarding this book. I don't know why, but I was less worried about picking it back up. There's a second book. I tried to start the second one. I read like the first paragraph and I was like, I'm not ready for this yet. So I will see. I'll definitely read it, of course, but I don't know when yet. But at the moment, I'm not reading the second one because I was like, I'm not ready to let go. So yeah, that's Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, 4 out of 5 stars. And I read it as an ebook. Next up is another sci-fi read. As I said, I was craving sci-fi and I was mainly craving faraway places. So I had this book on my shelf, this one here, which is the first 3 books in the Heinisch cycle by Ursula K. Le Guin. And I was like, you know, why not read the first one? So I read Rocannon's World. And yeah, this book is a very straightforward adventure set on a planet in a different solar system. And it's the planet that our main character, Rocannon, is exploring. He's a researcher, so he's researching this planet. So what his job basically is to figure out what kind of species live there and are they potential allies, could we work with them in the future, because there's this whole big universe, the Heinisch universe, that is forging allegiances between different solar systems and different planets that have beings, conscious beings living on them. Now, this planet gets invaded by an unknown entity. Rocannon says it's like the big enemy. We don't know anything about the big enemy. And we kind of have to follow Rocannon, how he needs to get to the other side of the planet to send a stress signal to his people so he can be safe, because all his communication has been shut off. So we go on an adventure. He has some companions that go with him. And it was a very straightforward adventure story, how you would imagine an adventure story. And I found it enjoyable, I must say. It was an interesting book. I found it very interesting to explore this planet with him. He obviously had like documentation of the planet, but he lost it on his way. And then we kind of had to like explore new parts of the planet that no one, actually not even like the locals that he's been in contact with have been to, and like learning about its people and what is happening there. But also the whole, like, it really showed how the Heinisch cycle is not written in chronological order, because the means of communication that Rocannon is looking for is actually the one that is discovered by Shavak in the 7th book, in The Dispossessed, which I've already read. So it's very interesting to see how these like are connected in a way, even though it plays on a completely different place. And I also felt it was written very differently from The Dispossessed. Like the writing style was very different from when I read The Dispossessed. So Ursula K. Le Guin probably like evolved as a writer or adapted her writing depending on the story. I read this book as a physical book, and for me there was just not that much happening because it was such a straightforward adventure. So I gave it 3 stars because I didn't feel like it was like blowing my mind in any way. It was very predictable but enjoyable, and it definitely like scratched the itch for faraway planets, which the next book also did. So as I was still craving to be on a different planet, I decided to pick up this beauty again, which is my Monk and Robot series, and read the second book and the last book in the Monk and Robot novellas, which is A Prayer for the Crown Shy. So I've already read the first one last year, and I have this beautiful edition where both books are in one, and the cover is as beautiful as the books are. So the Monk and Robot series is about a T-Monk called Sibling Dex and the robot Moscap. And in the first book, it's about Dex going to the wilderness and meeting the robot and like learning about what the robot does. And now in the second book, it's about the robot coming to the parts of the planet that are populated by humans and learning about humans, the human experience, and yeah, what humans need. That's kind of the punchline. I craved space, but I also craved comfort, and that book, or these books in general, they just give me all that. This is a book that really reminds me to slow down, to enjoy the little things in life, but also to like think positively and stay on track. It's very beautiful. I love the prose, especially when it's about food, the way Becky Chambers describes the food in these books. I just want to eat. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It just touches you. It comforts you. It's like really like a warm hug, like a blanket. And I really love that. This series poses a lot of questions of life because obviously Moscap, the robot, doesn't think the same way as humans do. And due to that, Dex is often challenged with the ways Moscap is like questioning what is going on. And in this book, we actually also had Moscap questioning its morality and how it feels about certain things because it was confronted with how humans do things. And it's just very interesting. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I read it as a physical book because I had it, and I rated it 4 stars just as the first one. And I'm actually really sad that this series is over because every time I go into this world, it just felt so cozy and warm and beautiful. And yeah, it really puts a different perspective onto sci-fi. Sci-fi doesn't have to be action. Sci-fi doesn't have to be doom. Sci-fi can be the post-apocalyptic comfort that maybe will come because it's not always going to be worse afterwards. Maybe it can be better. And I really think there's this hopefulness to Becky Chambers' books that I really love. So yeah, that was A Prayer for the Crown Shy. So the next book I read is a classic, and it's a reread for me, and it's The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I obviously read it in German. German is the language it was originally written in, and obviously it's my first language. And I have the version with the commentary of Vladimir Nabokov. I really struggle with his name. He's the author of Lolita, but that doesn't really matter. He just wrote an analysis of the book. And it's so funny because if you have The Metamorphosis, you know it's a short book. But this one here, half of it is just the analysis. So yeah, it was very interesting to read someone else's thoughts on this book. You see, that's like the middle of the book. Here the analysis starts and here the metamorphosis ends. And well, what can I tell you about the metamorphosis? Well, if you haven't read it or heard of it, it is a book where our main character, Gregor Samsa, wakes up one morning and is turned into a huge insect. And kind of on like how that impacts his life, obviously, but also very much on how it impacts his entire family's life because Gregor Samsa is the main breadwinner of his family. He is the oldest son, and he lives with his parents and his sister in that apartment. I just find The Metamorphosis such a fascinating book. I'm so happy I reread it. It really, once again, like told me that yes, this book is amazing and I really love it a lot. The last time I read it was 10 years ago. I read it for my graduation and I used it on my German graduation exam back then. And I don't remember what I talked about there. I think my theme for the whole graduation was complicated relationships between fathers and sons. And I read all kinds of books related to that, but this one was one of them. But this time I kind of read it through a mental health lens, which was very interesting because I felt there's a lot of parallels between how Gregor Samsa deals with his situation, but also how the family deals with his situation that can be linked to mainly depression, but also other mental health issues. But I would say depression mostly because there's passages written about how he obviously he can't get out of bed, and then how his family treats him because of that, but also how he himself thinks about not being able to do that. In the beginning, he's kind of like, well, okay, I now have to go to work, even though he has this condition that makes it impossible for him to leave the house, you know? And he's still like, okay, how I just have to put on my clothes and then I go to work. And then he realized like, well, but I actually can't move, but I'll still try. And that's kind of so interesting because I feel that's in the general conversation about mental health. There's always this saying that goes, if you broke your arm, you also go to the doctor and you won't lift heavy things, right? Because your arm's broken. So why, when you are depressed, you feel like you still have to function 100% all the time? And that's definitely a parallel that I see, how also the pressure from the outside is expecting him, his family in this case, is expecting him to still work and to still make money and be 100%, even though he's clearly in a condition that he can't. And I feel that's a very interesting angle of looking at it. For me, a big part of the book was the subject of communication, of healthy communication, or in this case, very unhealthy, and how talking about someone as if they're not here, how that affects someone's ability to like exist at all. Because if people pretend you're not there, are you even someone? You know, what does that do with your self-esteem and your will to want to exist? So I just find it a very deep work. It's like 70 pages and there's so much I could talk to you about, and I really enjoyed this reread. I loved it a lot. I felt it was, another insightful read for me, and I'm really glad I reread it. So it was a really good reread, and I rate the book 4 stars. I think it's great. I think a lot of people should read it. If you haven't already, read it. It's probably one of my favorite classics, definitely my favorite classic written in German, and I'm not the most classic person, but Kafka has a way of writing that feels accessible to me, and I must say, I really loved the book from first sentence to last. The first sentence of this book, 10 out of 10. Like, at least in German, I don't know how the translation is, but in German, that's a 10 out of 10 sentence to a book. That was The Metamorphosis by Kafka. All right, next up we get to my book club read, which was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. And I listened to it as an audiobook. So this book, I know it has been popular on like social media for the last few years, kind of a big one. It's another sci-fi read for me. So it's the 4th sci-fi I read. It was a sci-fi month. Half the books are sci-fi. And this book is about the life of a girl who is born into, we call it captivity, I guess. And she lives in a bunker underground with 39 other women without any privacy, and some guards who bring them food and make sure they don't touch each other. And there's like a whole thing. There's a whole set of rules. And it's basically about her life. So her early childhood first, but then also how they kind of get out of this bunker and wander the world in search for other people. And it's a book that is totally one of its kind. I have never read a book like this. It was very interesting because the book, when it ends, it leaves you with more questions than answers. But I felt that might be the charm of the story, because our main character doesn't know anything that we don't know, and the other way around. And that makes it such an interesting read. Usually as a reader, you know a little bit more than the main character, and you're like trying to get them to figure things out, or the main character already knows more than you, and the main character kind of tells you about the world. But in this book, you as the reader and the main character, you are on the same page of no knowledge about the outside world, no knowledge of what happened, no knowledge of why we're in this bunker, no knowledge of anything, and that makes it so interesting. So I had some issues with it, mainly for the language, or also some things that just didn't make that much sense to me later on in the book. A lot about the language and a lot about her suddenly knowing words of things she's never seen before and saying like, oh, someone told me that once. And it kind of just felt like, come on. And I also found the choice of the title interesting, because it could have been something else. And in my head, I was just wondering, like, I actually wrote into my reading journal, like, why are we centering men? Which, you know, yes, I get it. It's a big part of her life that she actually doesn't know about men. But like, it's also about so much more than knowing men. It's about not knowing the world at all and growing up without having been in touch with the world. And then we've had this discussion in the book club about it too, about how, you know, living without men, how that like makes her whole life different and her whole upbringing and how she views the world and what should and shouldn't be done, which is so true. But yeah, for me, I kind of just was like, And then I just had some language issues because obviously this book is originally written in French and I've read or I've listened to the English translation. And I just think some things probably don't work as well in translation as they do in French, because there's a whole segment on language, which in my head, I just feel like I need a translator's note on how did you do that. And there is none. There's no translator's note about it, which is already devastating because like translated books should have translated notes. That's just my opinion, because languages are so different, and I speak French and I know that if you write in French, there's a whole time you use that just does not exist in any of the other languages I speak. And like, I feel that's kind of relevant. So yeah, I just kind of had an issue with that. But overall, very interesting book, very different from what I've experienced so far in books. And I ended up rating it 3 stars because for me, it was just, it was okay, but it was not blowing me out of my seat. So that was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. Then the next book I read on my e-reader as an ebook, and it's At Grave's End by Jeaniene Frost, which is the 3rd book in the Night Huntress series. So this book I read every evening in bed because it's a light read, it's young adult fiction and urban fantasy. Yeah, it was just light. I was not very invested, but it was entertaining. And well, this book is the 3rd book in the series, so I can't tell you too much, but it's basically about a girl named Kat. She's a half vampire, and her boyfriend slash husband, I guess, I'm not sure, Bones, who is a vampire, and they both kind of in book 1 they meet because they both hunt vampires, and that kind of the vampire hunting kind of continues, although in book 3 it's not that prevalent, let's say like that. Basically, I read book 2 a year ago and I really did not like it. Book 2 was so bad that for me that I was like considering, do I even want to continue this series or not? But I was like, okay, it's January again, let's give it another try. And I did like this one better. And yeah, it has similar issues than book 2, where I just feel like I don't get why we are villainizing women. And I have a huge issue with one character in book 3, her Cat's so-called best friend. He is so problematic. Like, okay, maybe spoilers, but like, he is in love with her, and I'm sorry, she is taken. She tells him no, that she's not interested. And he keeps on like saying like completely out of pocket shit about like wanting to be with her and about not caring that she has a boyfriend. Like, dude, it's not even about the boyfriend. Dude, you should care about her saying no. Like, this dude, if he dies, I don't care. Like, I'm happy. And I don't understand how she can keep on going like, oh, but he's my best friend. Okay, I'm ranting. I'm sorry. I was not planning on ranting, but I just remembered that and now I'm mad. She's like, oh, but he's my best friend. And like, oh yeah, it's not his fault that he's in love with me. Yes, it's not, but it's also not your responsibility to deal with his bullshit. If he can't be dealing with the fact that you're taken, he needs to fuck off. Like, ade, we say. So yeah, that character pissed me off. I just hope in book 4 he's kind of like not here anymore, because overall, the story was enjoyable. Now, my issue with these YA books is I don't know how hard they go. Like, I don't know how dark they will get, because I'm someone, especially with like these urban fantasy and romance, with the romance plot stories, I really can't stand if they're like ripped apart or one of them gets injured or the angst. I suffer. I get like anxiety, especially if I read in bed. And then this book, I was constantly like, if I read the summary, I was like, damn, that reads scary. I'm really scared that someone's gonna die of my main characters, which, and then I'm always like, okay, how bad will it get? How dark do they go? And yeah, I have no clue, because I have never read a YA series from A to Z. Is that true? Yeah, everyone's middle grade. Like, none of these like YA catered to like AFAB people or like socialized as girls. And yeah, I'm curious. I've now decided I will continue the series. I gave this one 3 stars, It entertained me. It was not good by any means, but it's entertaining. And yeah, I have 6 more books to go, and I'll definitely continue, especially like reading it low commitment in bed. Perfect. It's like so easy to read. It goes so fast to read. I love that. I don't have to think much when I read this book. So yeah, 3 stars for this one, At Grave's End by Jeaniene Frost. Then the next book I read is, I think it's a classic. I've read How to Be an Alien by George Mikes, which is a really fun, super short read. I got this version at the thrift store, and actually, fun fact, in another thrift store, I saw the exact same version. So there seems to be a genre of people who maybe are passing away right now, and books ending up in thrift stores that read this book. It is the observation of the British society through the lens of a foreigner, and it's kind of like a guide on how to like fit in or not fit in with British society. And it was so funny. Like, George Mikes even writes it was not supposed to be a satire, but it was like perceived as one, and I get it. Because if you have like a mirror of someone like pointing out all the weird little things you and your people do, it's just hilarious to read. And it really, as much as it like exposes the Brits, it also exposes George Mikes and what he thinks is normal or not normal. And I just thought that was so entertaining. George Mikes is from Hungary originally, and he lived in the UK, I think, most of his adult life. And yeah, it was so entertaining. And you know, I would love to read a book like this about Swiss people. I think it would be hilarious because there's so many things that like you and your society do that you're just not aware of until someone points them out. Like, I've realized this because I watched some videos on people from Germany living in Switzerland and talking about like their struggles or like the things Swiss people do, and I was like, damn, do we do that? And I was like, yeah, we actually do, and it's just so normal that I didn't even notice. Very entertaining. How to Be an Alien by George Mikes. I gave it 4 stars, and I read it as a physical book because I had it. I recommend it to you. If you need a short, entertaining read, go read it. I also recommend it to my partner. I think that's a book my partner would actually be able to enjoy. And it's easily read in one sitting. I think it took me like less than an hour to read. And it has illustrations, and it's just overall really fun. All right, and now it is time for the final book of the month of January. And of course, I started with Octavia E. Butler. I ended with a book about Octavia E. Butler. The book is called Star Child, a biographical constellation of Octavia Estelle Butler by the author called Zoboi. And this book is about Octavia's life, mainly her childhood, but also her early adulthood, and basically all the books she released. It's very short, and it's a children's book. It's a mix out of poems written about her, and then short paragraphs that talk about her life or relevant things that happen in her life, and also pictures from her life. So either things she wrote as a child or pictures of her. It was a very nice read. I always feel reading about Octavia gives me so much more perspective on the things she wrote and why she wrote them and why she did what she did. This isn't the first biography I read about her, and I felt this one was especially beautiful because as it is catered to children, it also makes relevant connections to historical happenings during Octavia's life. So it kind of says like, oh yeah, so Octavia was born then and then, that is the same time as this and this happened. It kind of makes references to Black history especially, and I really appreciated that, and I felt it's a great way on how you can learn about history by following just a person's life, which is a very cool way to teach history. You know, I'm a teacher, so I kind of see these things. And it also made me think it could be interesting to maybe read that with a class, like a 9th grade, to read her biography and then read some of her short stories maybe, or something similar, or actually a full-length novel of hers. I thought that was really nice. And then the poems were also super nice. So it wasn't just like, you know, poems. Some poems actually were making shapes, mainly moons and stars, which I thought was so thoughtful, and it would really be super nice to see it as a printed copy. And yeah, for me, I really felt like if I read her stories, I can connect her stories to her biography. This book was also one that for me felt full of hope and also showed how Octavia was breaking boundaries and breaking barriers and also going against like what her family believed, but also against what was expected of a Black woman when she grew up, or is still, you know, there's not that many Black sci-fi authors or Black authors in general that get popular the way she did. And I think that kind of also has a layer of hopefulness, especially for young girls, because Octavia was a young girl once, and this book very much focuses on how she was a young girl who wanted to write and wanted to write stories and went against the odds in order to get there. And yeah, it was really a beautiful read and I enjoyed it a lot. I gave it 4 stars. It was a very nice biographical read about Octavia E. Butler. So that was Star Child by Ibi Zoboi. And that was the 8th book that I've read in January. So I started the year strong. 8 books is crazy. It's a big amount of books. So we'll see how it continues. I already finished one for February, which was by Octavia, and we'll see where it goes. I'm kind of unsure what to read next. That was it from me. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like it and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss another upload. I usually upload every Monday at 9 my time, every Monday evening. This video is maybe a little late, and yeah, I will see you next week in the next one. Have a good time and goodbye.